My name is Marcus Lancaster. I'm Vice President of Strategic Accounts at Quad. We're a marketing experience agency, and we help our customers in all aspects of the marketing journey. Our creative agency is Periscope. Our digital performance agency is Rise Interactive in Chicago, and we service the entire marketing spectrum from brand and creative strategy through content creation, deployment across all channels from digital through in-store and packaging, and the analytics around it. And we like to think our superpower is making the marketing experience frictionless for our customers, so we engage them in a lot of places. But I'm really pumped to be here with you today, Ben, because not only I'm a true classic wearer, I love your polos, I've got 3 of them, but also because I think you're a great story for the direct-to-consumer brands. I think it just shows the power still of digitally native brands. And for the people here that don't know you, why don't you start off by walking through the thrill ride that you've been on for the last few years?
Yeah, absolutely.
Hold on. Here we go.
There we go.
Thank you for sticking around. This is the last session, but not least. Promise to keep it engaging and entertaining, and let's make it interactive. So if you have questions or things you want to chime in on, please, by all means, let's make this conversational. Great to meet you, everybody. My name is Ben. I'm the president of True Classic. You can think about me as the day-to-day operator across the entire organization. And the story of True Classic is pretty unreal. We started back in 2019 in the summer. We're based in LA, in Calabasas, and we had a pretty simple yet ambitious purpose of how can we empower everybody to look good and feel good. And we thought about delivering on that by developing the best t-shirt in the world. And by that we mean something that fits you really, really well, that's super high quality, and it is affordable, so it's accessible for everyone. We worked really hard on developing that initial SKU, and the product market fit was just insane. And what we've done since then is expanded across 3 key dimensions: product, market, and channel. So product, we moved from just being a t-shirt brand to being a full premium apparel brand for men with activewear and chinos and jeans and jackets and so on. Markets, we moved from being in the US or a US brand to being a global brand, and we currently are in 192 markets worldwide. And channels, we moved from being just a website on Shopify to launching an app with Topcart, to launching on Facebook and Instagram shops, to launching on Amazon and launching our own 5 retail brick and mortar stores. And the title of this session is kind of like basically to put this in numbers, right? Is like we've been able to break 9 figures in 2 short years, completely bootstrapping this business and doing it profitably. And take that in, right? There's over 300 million businesses in the world. About 0.004% of them ever break 100 million or 9 figures. Name a brand you know of that we're able to do that in 2 years, bootstrapped and profitably. So that's kind of like the story I'm here to tell today, and a little bit of how we did it, and hopefully that inspires some of you on kind of like your journeys with your direct-to-consumer brands.
It's just so cool that it happens so fast. And one of the things I was going to ask about is obviously your target audience is men, but how did you go about? What were the vehicles you used to find those customers, and how is your audience evolving as you're growing so rapidly?
Yeah, so I think for us, like our TAM or total addressable market is very broad. We're very inclusive in nature. We're not fashion forward. We sell essentials, blanks, colors that are kind of like core or staples, the shape of like this black long sleeve crew neck and the like. So it's basically available for almost anybody who wants to buy that. And even if you're not the guy wearing it, we actually have a very substantial group of customers who are females who buy for fill in the blank: significant other, dad, brother, nephew. And so we have always targeted very, very broad because we truly believe that our products can sit in pretty much anybody's wardrobe. And we're very inclusive in sizing. So we went all the way from small to 3XL. Now we're developing 4XL and really trying to make everybody, irrespective of their body type, look good and feel good. And that really was a big advantage for us because what it allowed us to do is advertise very, very broadly. And we were able to find product market fit with just a lot of different types of segments and consumers out there. And if you think about some of the industry challenges, most recent ones in the shape of iOS 14 or the kind of like evolving privacy landscape, we weren't really impacted by that to the same extent that some others have because we are not in a kind of like a niche market. We really can attract and retain almost anybody.
Yeah, it's fantastic. One of the questions that we run into with the brands that we engage with is many times direct-to-consumer brands reach an inflection point where Meta alone isn't the path to the next customer, so they really expand to an omni-channel presence. You're kind of doing that now. Can you tell us a little bit about how you've approached that and also how you're measuring it?
Yeah, of course. So we talk about two different types of channels when it comes to expansion. The first being the marketing channel. So to your point, where do we advertise? How do we reach customers? So we started on Meta and we grew on a lot of different ones, right? So Google and YouTube and TikTok and podcasts and direct mail and TV, name a channel. We either are running on it or tried it in the past. Affiliates, influencers, programmatic. Then there's sales channels. And so we started with the website and then everything else we talked about with like the app and now with retail. And Amazon, right? And the way we think about it ultimately is the sales channel expansion is basically us casting a wider net and saying if we're already, let's say, advertising very heavily on Meta, right? Someone may come and click right there and then, but someone may just stumble upon our store in DC and realize, oh, I remember these guys. I want to go check it out. So now we have two, if you will, areas where we can interact or touch, kind of like touch points with that customer or being able to kind of like serve them wherever they may be. We also learned from our customers that many of them shop on Amazon regularly, so we didn't play favorites and just listed ourselves over there. The measurement piece is actually pretty critical because that's the absolute foundation of our strategy. And what we do is, or the saying that we kind of like follow is that wherever performance goes, budget flows. We don't play favorites when it comes to what channels we advertise on. Every channel needs to prove themselves. And we also don't look at it so much from a mix as we do look at it from how can I maximize the opportunity presented to me on any given channel and spend up to a point where it doesn't make sense to spend anymore marginally. So we use a bunch of different tools, some of which I'm sure you're all using as well. Marketing mix model, the post-purchase survey, incrementality studies with measured incrementality studies with the platforms in the shape of conversion lift and brand lift, multi-touch attribution models with Triple Whale and Northbeam, and the list kind of goes on. And it's a little bit of a headache, but every one of those pieces of technology really solve for different parts of the puzzle. So the first part, and I think about it in two main phases. The first phase for us is the overarching marketing mix. How much should we spend on fill in the blank, Meta or YouTube or TikTok? And we use those tools, MMM, and post-purchase survey and incrementality studies to really understand what is the actual return that we're getting as a brand for every dollar we're investing. And we'll make those kind of high-level decisions. And then there is other tools that are really good at gauging the tactics and understanding are they getting better or worse, mainly the Triple Whales and the Northbeams of the world, where you can look at a given tactic or a given ad and say, is ad A better than ad B? Or is prospecting on TikTok getting better or worse month over month, right? You can get that gauge. It won't tell you how good is it in actuality, which is something that's really important for brands to remember. It's always available for you to look at last click and what GA shows, but it's pretty dang inaccurate. And you shouldn't be using that to make any investment decisions. If there's one key takeaway for anybody who is on it is to really challenge your assumptions because it's available, but it's pretty bad when it comes to guiding you down the right path, right? And if you were to think about it, if you were to follow that, you just should take all your money and put it into kind of like branded search on Google because it has the highest ROAS, right? And what would that do for you, right? So that's kind of like in a nutshell, but measurement is something that's really near and dear to my heart and I think is very critical for brands who are looking to grow fast to fully understand and make those data-driven decisions.
You said something really fascinating to me when we were talking before. And that was when you were talking about how you measure CAC and ROAS and all the things you include in the calculation of the cost there. That might be interesting to this group. Would you like to share about the costs that go into your measurement there?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know I told the story that we were able to break 9 figures in 2 years, bootstrapped and profitably. I believe we could have broken 10 figures in 2 years if I didn't care for profitability, right? And so if you really are in this new era of, growth at all costs is not good anymore, right? And you can buy your revenue. Any one of us can. And you really realize that profitability is the name of the game, right? That's what makes you a sustainable business. And it doesn't matter what your exit strategy might be out there that you're trying to kind of reverse engineer from. But this is the era where everybody's talking about EBITDA, right? And EBITDA is king. I even have have one of my founders make me this hat that says EBITDA. And we're gonna wear that around the conference room. But point is, you need to really understand profitability. And the problem is, none of the measurement solutions out there speak profitability. They all speak, at best, ROAS being revenue. Not all revenue is equal. Your products have very different margin profiles. When we do international, every market is very different. Some have higher duties and taxes than others. Some are more expensive to ship to. Some have higher return rates, right? And so on and so forth. So what we're trying to do is really make our decisions as much as we can. We're not perfect there. It's a lot of work in progress. I don't want to make the illusion that we have it all figured out, because we don't. But what we're trying to do is get down to, at the very least, this contribution profit or gross profit level. So we take the revenue, we scrape out everything we know: payment processing fees, product COGS, pick and pack for fulfillment, outbound shipping, the expected returns, exchanges, CX tickets, and the cost associated with all of them. And we try to say, when we advertise $1 here, what do we generate in incremental gross profit? When we acquire a customer, what do we generate in incremental gross profit? When we have a session on a website, what do we generate in incremental gross profit? And then you start really having kind of like that be the North Star, side by side with revenue, and normalize it by sessions, by product, by customers, by orders, by anything you try to manage, and then by channel, by tactic, like literally anything you can think about. And that's how we make our decisions, right? So we will say, acquisition for us is very important. We're very comfortable acquiring at a break even. And the way we look at it is, say, if we're able to acquire, let's say, I'm making this up, 100,000 customers in the month of March at a break even, what if I was able to acquire 10,000 more for $1 deficit pair? When would I get my money back? Is it worth it or not? What do I know about my retention curves? When would I get paid back? And then what do I optimize for, right? Sometimes earlier in the year, we are a very Q4 heavy business. So we know that whatever we advertise on right now is going to come throughout the remaining of the year. So if my goal is to generate some sort of like a P&L on an annual snapshot and show certain trends, right? I'm baking with that in mind. And it's really that idea of like not just the first order, but what can I expect for the remaining of the period, whichever period I'm optimizing for. And so the one scorecard that we use at True Classic, which is not rocket science, but really important to establish for your brands, in my opinion, is the cohorts analysis of charting essentially the cumulative gross profit per customer over time. Some people call it lifetime value, but I'd like to clarify what we mean by lifetime value, and that is the lifetime value for us. It's not revenue, it's not sales, it's not orders, it's not anything else. How much gross profit do we generate per customer over time, cumulatively? And as a team, if this is the scorecard for the company, our goal is to bend that curve and raise it, right? How can we make that initial order more profitable? How can we make customers to come back more often? How can we make, when they do come back, make healthier orders, right? Or generate healthier orders in the shape of gross profit per order and revenue per order. And that is our North Star. And by being super laser focused on that, we've been able to, maintain sustainable growth and not get confused around, top line revenue and what it might mean for being able to, again, sustain, especially in this environment with uncertain economic terms. Being able to sustain your business profitably is your biggest superpower. And that's what makes you not kind of like at the mercy of any investor or VCs and what they might think that, you should be valued at and things of that nature.
I can tell you that as I engage with brands, your relentless focus on profitability is unique and it's powerful, and I'm impressed by it. One of the things we were talking about, which kind of picks up on this theme, is brand marketing. At e-tail, that was a common theme that people were reinvesting in brand marketing, but you had some interesting thoughts about that and how you guys have approached it at True Classic. Could you elaborate on that, please?
Yeah, so I feel like all of us marketers and executives or operators, people love brand marketing, right? Because who doesn't want their flashy brand experience out there in the world, whatever it may be. Maybe it's a billboard, maybe it's a TV spot, maybe it's whatever, you name it. we're trying to put that away and really think about, can we essentially measure whatever it is that we're doing? And when we say it's a brand activity or it's an awareness campaign, like, what does it actually mean? Like, what's the value in that activation? It could be brand awareness, but can I actually quantify how many incremental people are now aware of the brand? And what happens to those that are now aware? Do they actually make a purchase? If so, when do they come back? And if I cannot crystallize that notion of like, what is the ROI here? What do we actually generate? We just don't do it. And over time, like, we have been trying to essentially figure out how can we, yes, we want to do brand, but we want it to be performant branding activations, if that makes sense. So for example, one of the reasons we thought about retail as a big opportunity for us is before we would do a billboard, we would open up a shop. And because when you have a shop, they can actually come in and they can purchase and they can experience, right? So it's a DR version of a billboard in a crowded mall, right? Sounds great. If we're trying to do like an elevated branding, kind of like branded ad online, I would want to measure the brand lift, very specific brand lift. And what's the purpose of that campaign? While I also want to measure, did it also generate sales? What's really important for us is that all our activations are effective and are not draining our resources. Because again, we are a bootstrap brand. And if you go too far on the branding train, you might have with nothing kind of like fundamental to hold your business together. And so that's been kind of like our general approach. Over time, as we grow, we are trying to do more and more of that, but we put the measurement scrutiny on any dollar we spend. And even if it's a little bit less tangible of an outcome, we don't leave it as like, this was a great brand activity, and we just kind of like leave it with, you can measure it, and so you kind of like live with it, you know, and that's just something that we put a lot of scrutiny around.
Fascinating and interesting, because that's a conversation point this year. Now, you just started to open stores last year. Why don't you talk a little bit about your strategy on the stores and how's that complicated, measurement as well?
Yeah, so for the stores, we found a partner named Leap that essentially is a retail expansion as a service. And they've been great to us. We've been able to open stores super quickly and kind of like capital efficiently. And the idea there was, look, we play in apparel, right? Apparel primarily is being sold offline. The last research I've seen is over 65% of it is being sold offline. And so if I can go online and tell everybody that I sell the best fitted shirt in the world and you have to believe me, there's still going to be a lot of people who would need to see it for themselves in order to feel good about it. And so the idea is like, how can we meet the people wherever they are and give them that experience? We thought about it from like an omni-channel perspective. So with Leap, they're leveraging a Shopify POS that integrates with our site, so we can get data around, are those our customers? Are those net new customers? How should we think about retail as an acquisition channel? When people buy online, do they then make subsequent purchases offline? When they buy offline, do they make subsequent purchases online? We do surveys, so we ask people online, how did you first hear about us? And retail is one of the options. When they shop in the retail store, how did you first hear about us? We give them all the online channel options. So we really try to understand kind of like the interdependency or the relationship between the kind of like the different channels. Our customers don't think about it this way, right? If you're a customer out there in the world, you don't think like, oh, I'm making a purchase online. Oh, I'm making on mobile, on desktop. I went into the retail store. Like, you just go about your day, right? And you just make a purchase. You don't even think about it. But what's important for us when it comes to effectiveness and efficiency is to not downgrade the impact that retail might have by only looking at what happens in the four walls. Because retail plays a much bigger role. It's a showroom. It's an opportunity for someone to truly experience your brand, to truly test on your products, to try them on, right? To have maybe a better experience. And there's other considerations back to the conversations of what goes beyond revenue, such as online, when people place a return, the biggest reason is sizing and fit. We see a much lower return rates when they come into the retail store. Why? Because they can try it on, and they don't need to make guesses on like, am I a medium or a large or an extra large, right? And so you kind of think about, again, what is the profile of that customer? We see different category penetration when it comes to retail versus online, because maybe something in the way we merchandise the stores is different than the flows that people kind of like go through in our site, and maybe certain categories don't get the same levels of visibility. So I would say in a nutshell, there's just a lot of learnings. And then what we're trying to think about it, retail and the role it plays is from this like omni-channel total business impact from all the different kind of like lenses I just shared analytically and the role it plays. And we're pretty bullish on it.
Well, you're bullish because you've got a great brand. A follow-up question would be, you said that you cast a wide net in terms of your audience. And I know it's early days in the retail presence, but are you seeing the demographics of your customer look different that's shopping on your in-store versus on your website?
So frankly, I don't have a great demographic data on the offline stores. Online, we ask people post-purchase to indicate their kind of gender and age and some other stuff. And you have Google Analytics in some better sense. Like offline, we haven't really figured it out quite yet. We see it once they start making subsequent purchases, kind of like going into the online sphere. But majority of our retail customers are first time, and that's kind of interesting.
That's great
because you start thinking about it as like an acquisition channel. And then the question is like, what happens from an LTV perspective? If someone came in through the retail door, do they have a better experience with the brand? Do they come back more often? Like, we don't even have the answers for those types of things, but we do have some hypotheses of like, it's probably a better experience to enter into a brand through kind of like an engagement in a retail store than maybe our website that might not be able to do as good of a job. And then from there, people are getting super comfortable. They know their size, they know their fit, they know what they like, and they can quote unquote replenish or place subsequent orders. But still early days, and we don't have the data.
Well, it's only been a few months.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Switching gears a little bit, what are some of the challenges you're facing in 2023, and how are you going about solving them?
So many challenges. One of the biggest ones for us has always been inventory. And I think it's just been a crazy swing, right? Like it was back, a year plus ago, it was like there was no inventory. Then there's now everybody has too much inventory. And it's just kind of like all over the place. And for a brand like ours, because we move so fast and across so many different things, it's just very, very hard to forecast. Because you open up in all those markets and you open up all those product categories and you open up Amazon and you just do a lot of different things and you can really struggle with forecasting it, and everything changes, right? Like your advertising spend changes, you open up you have a new creative, it goes crazy and then it fatigues and then it's not there anymore. So like, what do you do then? So I would say that's been a really major one, and we're trying to really build around kind of like basically a more nimble supply chain to allow us to kind of like stomach the ebbs and flows, and how can we, run the business more smoothly. And beyond that, I feel like it's not necessarily a challenge, but it's something we always think about with like the economic uncertainty. Are we pricing kind of like optimally? Are there people who have kind of like bigger concerns around pricing or price sensitivity where maybe missing out on them, or vice versa, which I don't necessarily think we're as concerned with. But that's been an interesting year, just taking all the conversation out there. There's just a lot of events and shifts in consumer sentiment and in inflation and interest rates and in just you name it, right? So you're trying to kind of like make sense of it. What does it mean for my business, right? Like, how should I run it? Like, is there something that we should be doing differently? So that's been kind of like quite challenging, because I feel like it didn't feel like it impacted us nearly as much as we initially were planning around it potentially impacting us, which is a good thing, but still a challenge. And I would say lastly, maybe hiring has always been something that is very important to us, and not necessarily a challenge, but it's perhaps one of the biggest things that I task myself with is like, how do I find A+ talent that are great cultural fit, that have the right makeup as a human, that can really thrive within a fast-paced environment, enjoy it, and add value, which I think is just an ongoing challenge.
Yeah, hiring's a challenge for everybody right now. All right, I've got two more questions for you. I'll start with, if you were going to give a couple pieces of advice, I'm sure a lot of it's nested in our conversation already, to nascent D2C brands, but if you wanted to pick out a few key takeaways, what would you provide as advice?
Net new or already in business?
Or
Yeah.
early stage.
I mean, when you're early, I would say in this environment, pick a large TAM. Pick a category that is, quote unquote, blue ocean, right? Because if you have a solid team and solid execution and you're playing in a big field, chances are you're going to win and you're going to have a decent kind of like success rate. The more niche you are, I think the more challenging it gets in this day and age, primarily because all those growth engines, mainly Meta and TikTok and Google and whatnot, are just less effective without all the data that they used to have access to. So that's like a kind of like from a category and product positioning perspective. And then I would say stay focused on the things that matter. Not everything matters, but there's a handful of things that matter really, like very much, right? And to me, it's like traffic generation or advertising and how you get them to your site. And within that, the keyword is creative. Always has been, but more so now than ever before. How do you create amazing content that really attracts the right people, tell the right message, connect with people psychologically, right? Get them to your site. Second bucket is like that experience on your site. Start with your website before you do any other channel, but did you CRO it to death? How many tests are you running every week? Are you optimizing your cart? Are you optimizing your checkout flow, right? Did you think about bundles, think about upsell, cross-sell, think about post-purchase upsell, and so on. And the third is your repeat or retention mechanisms, right? So it's mainly email and SMS, but you can also think about an app. You can also think about WhatsApp and other messaging kind of like internationally and build an engine there, because a lot of people really put a lot of focus on acquisition, but your business is worthless if you're not good at retention. Because most people at best would acquire customers at break even. That would be a good case scenario. Most are investing. So if you don't know how to monetize your assets, being your customers, post that initial order, then what kind of value do you actually create as a business? So I think everybody has that moment of a realization of how important retention is, and I would put a lot of effort into figuring that out.
I hear retention is the new acquisition all the time. All right, wild card question for you, and then we'll turn it over to the audience. Aspirationally or concretely, what do you see True Classic looking like in a couple years?
Okay, so I think our purpose or mission stays strong of empowering everybody to look good and feel good, and by that we mean everyone. We started with men, so females is definitely something with high priority on our horizon. We already have many of hers who kind of like shop for him, and we're thinking, but well, we have her and others. How can we serve her in a very similar way that we serve him? So that's really big for us. The globalization component is really big for us. So we're really in the infancy stages of that, but I view that as like a major opportunity for us to really be able to do what we did in the US in many other key markets. And for us, the UK and Canada and Australia are like obvious ones, but there is such a long tail of countries where we should have a presence and should succeed. And then that omni-channel environment is also something that I feel like is very much kind of like in our future. So we have our 5 stores, but I could see us with hundreds of stores and really kind of like available everywhere. We just need to make sure that we build a solid model that we feel confident scaling. And then from a product perspective, we want to complete the wardrobe. So we're never, I don't think ever going to be like fashion forward, but we want to have like full head to toe, all the essentials. So we're developing blazers, and we're developing, dress shirts, and we're developing other types of jackets, right? And just everything that you would need in your kind of like daily life. So there's more work to be done there to kind of like complete the assortment.
Well, that'll keep you busy for a couple of years. What questions do we have from the audience?
Okay, so one question I'm just curious about, and then I have other question. So curious question is, who's doing your patterning? Is that in the U.S.? Like, who does the patterns for these new products that you're talking about?
We manufacture all over the world, but we develop design fit in the U.S. with our product team.
Okay.
But we have factories all over the world.
Okay. Second thing, I was checking out the website while you were talking, and I mean, the models are beautiful, and they look just like my husband, like 28 years ago when we got married. They don't look like him now. So, how are you thinking about including different body types?
That's a great one. It is actually high on the list. As you can imagine, for a brand like ours, it's so early on is very challenging, but it's a clear gap that we have in terms of actually being representative. And it's true across colors, across sizes, right, across heights. And one of the things that I've seen recently is this. Someone brought up AI. I think this is the year of AI. And if there's one thing I would encourage all of you guys to really dive into is how to leverage AI. Someone here was mentioning the booth at ShopTalk. This is Zowie, and it's actually our example that we just developed with them on like an AI bot to enable shopping experience. So there's a lot of that. One of which is leveraging AI to showcase products on different body types and colors, and allowing people to swap and say like my height or weight is, and load the website with all the products and all the models that look and feel like you or whoever you might be. High on the list, hard to do. I think a combination of AI and just enabling that personalization and customization is what we're trying to explore. Haven't figured it out yet, but really, really important. The alternative, though, of shooting every product, every SKU, every color on a model of every type, size, height, this is very complicated, as you can imagine, and gets out of hand. So we need to figure out like a technological solution there so people can see themselves in the clothes.
So I'm just going to share one little piece of personal insight here. So I like to sew, and over COVID, I purchased a dress form that is a 3D model of me. And so I'm wondering how you could take the technology, it's not AI, but taking technology in a 3D scan, and then you've got that actual person, then you just make the recommendation on size and fit based on the 3D scan. So it's not a custom product, but you get you see where I'm going.
I love that. And I think earlier in ShopTalk, Savage Fenty shared their example from fitting rooms and how you basically do exactly that. I've played around with like apps on your phone that supposedly scan your body measurements, but I think the biggest issue there, and please let me know if you have a good technology because I would geek all over it. I would love that. But I think the biggest issue there so far from what I've seen is the accuracy, and people feeling like, yes, I did my scan, but it's actually not getting my measurements accurately. So that's the biggest deal. But huge priority for us, especially a company like ours that stands for fit. We want to make sure that we give you the right recommendations. What am I not worried about is the better question. Worried about a lot of different things, but I don't know if I have like one big worry. I mean, we talked about earlier kind of like some of the challenges. I would say that, getting our forecasting right and getting our inventory levels right is a big one for me that is really important for a brand like ours that's bootstrapped and trying to stay profitable, right sizing, kind of like our buys, our inventory levels is always kind of like challenging. We are constantly worried about like remaining innovative and remaining on that cutting edge and not getting complacent around like what we have been able to do. So there's this constant pursuit to like what's the latest and greatest and who is on the efficient frontier of ad tech and martech and who are the partners we should be working with. Shout out to Postscript or whoever that is, right? And then beyond that, like I'm not as worried as I used to be, but I used to be more worried about how is this year going to pan out. Specifically, I felt like Q1 was going to be brutal because of just where the economy was headed last year. And luckily for us, it's actually been good times all in. So feeling a lot less worried about it. And I actually feel also like the Fed is finally getting it together and kind of like hopefully moving into better times. So, so those are some points.
Last question is, you moved really quickly from the core protein
Absolutely. And I think that goes back to inventory planning and forecasting. So core is always our core, and very similar to any other channel, we look at it as like, we have a core business. People love our shirts. That's what started us. That's what made us so great. So we're going to continue to grow that as a line of business while offering other categories. I think we have another 14 or 15. And they don't, like, when I introduce jeans, people don't now make a decision of like, do I buy a t-shirt from these guys or jeans from these guys? It's another piece to the offering. And now I can actually go to my t-shirt guy and tell him, hey, you might actually feel inspired by getting that same thing you love about the shirt, the way it feels, the way it fits, the way how comfortable it is in kind of like another garment. And then we look at it from almost kind of like a different opportunity or like kind of like line of business of like, I want to grow the jeans business. I'm not going to go crazy about it. I'm not going to make the same size of buys that I do with t-shirts, because then I got to build more confidence. I got to perfect my funnel. I got to make sure that my ads are speaking, the right messages. I got to make sure that my landing pages are operating optimally. And so all those other categories are very much new and kind of like work in progress growth levers. But the core is the core, and that actually hasn't changed. So I don't know if that kind of like answers the question, but we don't view that actually from a cannibalistic standpoint, because we didn't offer a bunch of other shirts. We're offering other garments that actually help him, while they shop with us, have a little bit more of a opportunity to complete their wardrobe, if that makes sense.
And to grow LTV.
And to grow LTV. And that's another thing for sure, because when people buy multiple categories, it's a totally different beast than a single category customer, in a good way. Oh yeah, with Lip. Amazing. Thank you for all the work that you're doing.
Yeah, I sat in your session yesterday. It was great. Well, thank you very much, everybody, for staying. Oh, I'm sorry, Steph. I stepped on you there. But thank you for staying. We really appreciate it. And Ben, I really want to say thank you. I really have enjoyed our time together this week.
Yeah, of course. Thank you, everybody.